Because again, if every time you feel not so great things, you have to numb it with food, you're going to have food noise. Because here's what happens. Then you numb it with food. And then all of a sudden, guess what? Food has those calories that you're trying to avoid. And you're like, oh, fuck, I blew my calories out of the water. And then you're playing math all day, trying well, then how do I compensate this here or there? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to start over Monday. Like, you see how this just like one thing feeds the other, feeds the other, feeds the other. If I'm always thinking about food because I'm running from what I feel and I'm always distracting myself with dieting and all this stuff, how do I hold space? Number one is journal. Easiest way to do this is journal what you feel. The only prompt you need is, what do I feel right now? And write like you're writing a letter to a friend. Food noise is the side effect. It's this sounding alarm of something deeper that's going on. So there are a lot of reasons one has food noise. If I had to say my top 3 reasons, someone struggles with food noise. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you're new around here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton, and I am your host. And if you're a returning listener, I appreciate your loyalty more than you imagine. I'm a big loyalty guy. So thank you for coming back. Now, in today's episode, we're going to go real freaking deep, like hella deep. We're going to talk about food noise, always thinking about food, and emotional eating. So if you're here because you struggle with all the food stuff, you are in the right spot. Some of my most popular episodes happen to be around all 3 of these subjects: the concept of food noise and stopping it, the emotional eating, the emotional side to all of this, if we're being honest. And then just the idea of always thinking about food. So, because I think a lot of people have a real misunderstanding about how all these work. So we're going to get into each of these. This is not going to be like a full hour-long episode. So this is going to be a really good episode for really kind of going in, getting some tangible takeaways and coming out. So hopefully you get a lot of value out of this. So sorry, I just had a second guess. If you see me looking around on the YouTube, I couldn't remember if I turned on my recording on my audio. So we are good. Okay, guys, let's get into it. So here's the thing. Let's talk about food noise. At the end of the day, you have to understand this. Right now, food noise is very, very trendy. Ever since, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but at least from my perspective as being like I've been in this industry for probably 13 years at this point, I think. And food noise, the subject has gotten really, really trendy and really almost clickbaity at this point because of all the GLP-1s coming out, the semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, like you name it, the injections for weight loss. Well, here's the thing. I jokingly say this, but I'm serious, as I've been helping people with food noise way before food noise was a searchable thing. But if someone struggles with food noise, you know exactly what I mean. When I go, hey, you struggle with food noise, you know exactly what is going on in your head. But a lot of people misunderstand what food noise is, how to approach it, and what it actually means. Here's the truth. For everyone, it's different. When it comes to all this mental noise and obsession around food, but the noise in your head specifically, it's different for every person. What I mean by that is I actually want to do a piece of content like this. I want to go to downtown here where I live in Indianapolis and do like street interviews of like, what's food noise mean? What's food noise mean to you? And just so you can really see the differences. So for some people, food noise is all about hunger. It's just like they are so hungry all the time. But for others, it has nothing to do with hunger. Like it has literally nothing. It's nothing at all to do with it. It's like, no, I'm never hungry, but I can't quit thinking about food, or I'm always worried about my next meal, or I'm always on my diet, off my diet. And I'm always craving certain foods, but I'm not hungry. All these different things. So for some people, food noise has nothing to do with hunger. For some people, it's all the emotional side. It's feeling guilty as they eat something and they feel bad because they're missing out on the burger at the social event. But then if they have the burger at the social event, they feel guilty because of their diet. Like every person is different. Here's the one resounding truth around food noise. Food noise is never the issue. Food noise is a sounding alarm for a deeper actual issue. Not saying food noise isn't an issue, but food noise is the fire alarm going off. But a fire alarm isn't the actual problem. The fire alarm is telling you there is smoke and fire in the room somewhere. If I go downstairs in my kitchen and my fire alarm, my smoke alarm goes off, it's not the problem. Like imagine that. Imagine hearing your smoke alarm go off and you think it's the problem. You don't even think about there being a fire, but you go, you know what? That thing won't be quiet. Why is it going off? You know what? Maybe I should just buy really fancy earmuffs to like quiet the fire alarm noise. No. When you hear the fire alarm go off, you go, there's smoke somewhere. The smoke detector is going off because there's smoke. Well, where there's smoke, there's fire. What's on fire in my house? That's how I want you to view food noise, because I did a podcast. We'll link it in the description. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. We did a podcast on a way more in-depth side of food noise. And I broke down like six main reasons that I see people have food noise. And I like went super deep on this one. So we're not going to get quite that deep, but the reality is everyone's food noise is different. So when you have food noise, it's your smoke detector going off and it's saying, something is deeper. For you, it may be an emotional thing, and we need to look at the emotional side. For some, it may be a restriction thing. We got to look at your relationship with food and why you're restricting. For others, it may be an unsustainable plan. Like, of course, you're going to have food noise around carbs if you get rid of all your carbs and you kiss all your favorite foods goodbye. For others, it may be you've had 400 calories today, or you think gum and 4 almonds is a meal. Of course, you're going to have food noise because your body's like, we're fucking hungry. Right? So I want you to like change your entire perspective around food noise, that it is not the issue. It is the alarm system that there is another issue going on below the surface. This is when we need to think critically about this. This is where, again, food noise isn't the issue. If someone says, Jared, I have food noise, I go, my first question is, how does that come up for you? Tell me more about it. Describe it. I don't understand food noise. Tell me more about it. And they go, well, it's just like once I start, I can't stop. Oh, okay. That's totally different than hunger. But if I ask someone else, they say, oh man, I struggle with food noise. I go, cool. How's that come up for you? And they say, I'm just always hungry all the time. Okay, well then let's look at how many calories you're eating. Oh, you're eating 1,200 a day because your dumbass doctor told you to? Like, of course. Like, you know what I'm saying? Again, I probably shouldn't have said it like that. I'm not here trying to shit on doctors. It's just been a thing this week, in the past few weeks, of a lot of clients are saying their doctors tell them they need to be on 1,200 calories, and there's no reason that most adults should be on 1,200 calories. But that's a different tangent. But you have to understand, that's what I'm saying. So we have to understand that food noise is the side effect. It's this sounding alarm of something deeper that's going on. So there are a lot of reasons one has food noise, but I found if I had to say my top 3 reasons someone struggles with food noise. Okay. So we're going to get into my what I would call my top 3. These are very different. This is probably not your normal food noise conversation, so I'm hoping it will help. Again, there are a lot of reasons for food noise. So these 3 may not resonate with you, and that's totally fine. I would say if they don't resonate with you, then go watch the full episode that I did on all the reasons that I could think of that someone has food noise, just from my coaching brain. Because here's the thing: at the end of the day, is if you have food noise, nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. There's just some stuff going on under the surface. It's just like if your engine is pinging, well, we need to look under the hood and see what is rolling around in there. It's no different. A lot of people think just because they have food noise, they have to all of a sudden, like they need like some intervention, or they have to get on GLP-1, or they have to overall. It's like, it's not quite like that. Of course, there are some cases where those are things, but before we go do anything aggressive, let's look at some foundational pieces. And I've been doing this for a hot minute. I've been coached probably at this point thousands of people, and these things work really well. So these are my top 3 for when it comes to food noise. Because again, also, like I said, there's several reasons for it, but the reason it may be so loud for you is you may be what I call a combo platter. You may have all 3 of these going on. You may have 5 of the 6 reasons. So it's not that it's one inherent thing, but it's that thing and that thing and that. It's like, it's kind of like, at the end of the day, if you just are run down at the end of the day, it may not have been one thing. It may not have been just your kids. It may not have been just work. It may not have been your mother-in-law calling you. It may not be just the dog that shit on the floor. It may be a combination of like all of those things. We have a tendency to judge ourselves when we're struggling with something. We're like, well, that's not that big of a deal. That's not that big of a deal. That's not that big of a deal. Well, but when you put 3 things that are not that big of a deal, and now it's one big deal, right? So if you have a little bit of all these reasons for food noise, it may be why it's this all-encompassing, overwhelming mental thing. So we just need to go around and fix this one, adjust this one, and be good to go. Okay. So let's go through these. Number 1, eat enough. One of the biggest things it's wild when it comes to food noise is we need to have a conversation, is most people are under eating. Now you may say, Jared, there's an obesity epidemic, and like or you may be sitting there going, Jared, you're crazy. I want to lose 40 pounds. How are you saying I don't eat enough? Well, the problem is most people who struggle with weight loss, who have trendy dieted most of their life and are on again, off again in this crazy ass roller coaster, when you're trying to lose weight, you're under eating, causing the food noise, causing you to always think about food, causing you to be hungry, causing you to always be good because you're following an unsustainable plan. And then you have that moment you fall off. So then you binge and overeat. and you're wallowing in the fuck it world until you reach your rock bottom and go, you know what, I'm getting back on track. So then we binge eat the rest of the weekend because we're going to start over Monday. And then you're like, boom, back to 1200 or back to cutting carbs or slashing calories or whatever it may be. So you may say, Jared, I literally want to lose 40, 50 pounds. How can you say I'm under eating? It's because when you're dieting, you're probably going this too aggressively. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for a really long time. And most people, I'll put it this way. If I look at my most successful clients, most of them say this to me. It's right around, we get to, in my coaching program, it's a 3-stage process. So after we fix the inner game, stage 1, we call it dieting from the inside out, the name of the show. Stage 2 in my program is called boring fat loss, because that's how fat loss should be. Then stage 3 is maintenance mastery, where it's a whole different conversation. But right around stage 2, when we're like starting to hit a stride, most of my most successful people, they say, Jared, I feel like this should be harder. Jared, I feel like I should be doing more. I feel like I should be eating less. I feel like I should be moving more. Meanwhile, they say this all while they're getting the best, fastest, and most sustainable results they've ever gotten in their life. That's why stage 2 is called boring fat loss, because this is how it's supposed to be. We're also retraining your brain around chill fat loss. Okay. So but the reality is most people feel that way because they have been conditioned that fat loss is supposed to be this treacherous thing. And it's like a suffering contest when that could not be further from the truth. So step 1, if you're having food noise, one of the biggest reasons I see it is because you're not eating enough. So it makes sense why you're always thinking about food. Literally, like when I really sat down to go over these top 3, and I'm like, every other even subset of reason that in my head, there may be food noise is because it comes off of one of these 3. But one of the biggest is if you're trying to lose weight and you're under eating, or you're not eating enough, or you're in too big of a deficit, or you've been camping out in your deficit or your fat loss phase for too long. Like there's a massive, I know correlation does not always equal causation, but there's a massive correlation between every person who's ever said, Jared, I struggle with food noise, who also say, I've been dieting most of my life. I have been trying to lose weight for years at a time. I've done every diet you can name under the sun, every brand name diet. Well, there's a reason I don't have any of my clients do any brand name diets, is because they're all unsustainable, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. There's probably a small subset who could be successful with keto or Optavia or Weight Watchers or all these, whatever. But like I've, in the past 13 years of coaching, I've never recommended one once, not even once. Like there's all these other gurus on the internet, like in their Instagram bio, they're like the macros coach. They're like the intermittent fasting coach. They're the carnivore coach. They're the whatever. And it's like, people say, Jared, what are you? And I go, I'm whatever the person in front of me needs, whatever's sustainable for them. I'm the Brenda, the Sarah, the Jackie, the Patricia, the whatever. And it's that's how it needs to be. So if you want the most sustainable long-term results that last, you need to have a plan that's built around you and no one else. So that's what I do with my clients. That's why this works so well. That's what I'm trying to impress upon you here on the podcast. But step number 1 is for food noises. I don't blame you for always thinking about food. You're eating the equivalent of a toddler. Yeah, I would hope you would think about food all day. Or if you're following one of these like super low calorie diets where you got rid of half of your favorite foods and you're only eating like chicken, rice, and broccoli every day, like, yeah, you're probably going to think about food. If you're super calorically restricted, it's biological for you to think about food because you're deprived, because you're under eating severely. Because then I see, this is really common too in the world of fat loss and in diet culture. There's a lot of greedy people. What I mean by that is we see, I'll give you a jujitsu analogy. In jujitsu, there's what we call, there's a lot of people that get greedy. So for example, I was rolling with someone the other day and I got greedy. I got to a position and I was ready to go for a submission on my partner, but my position wasn't fully solidified, right? In jujitsu, there's a motto is position before submission, because you have to have the rock solid foundation of your position where you can hold that person against their will and then attack them and do a submission. Well, I got greedy and I just jumped on their arm and then they flipped me. And I'm like, I got greedy. I went after it too aggressively and I wanted it a little bit too much. And I sacrificed the sustainability of my role. It's no different for you here. The amount of people I see who will lose 3 pounds and then they go, oh, I just cut out a few hundred calories and I lost 3 pounds. I bet if I cut out more calories, I'll lose like 10 pounds. You're being greedy. Stop it. Or if you lost, let's say you started making better decisions or you started working out or doing some cardio or getting your steps up or some great habit. And all of a sudden clothes are fitting better, and you go, oh, let me increase this. Well, there you go. You're getting greedy again. And then it's no wonder you fall off. There's an analogy I've been using with clients a lot lately. Like everything is a teeter-totter, right? The teeter-totter seesaw, like you'd see on a playground. Like if you're watching the YouTube video of my arms around. So to show you this, because in no world does a teeter-totter or seesaw have both sides go up. It doesn't work. If one side goes up, the other has to go down, right? If you're on a seesaw or a teeter-totter, you cannot affect one side without the other. So if you increase your calorie restriction, your sustainability goes down. If you increase your number of habits, your adherence drops, right? Or at the same time, if you increase your food freedom, your falling off starts to go, you're falling off and food noise starts to go down, right? Like everything is a teeter-totter. So every decision you make or lack of a decision you make, what's the other side of this seesaw or teeter-totter doing? You have to look at it from both sides. Too often we make a decision like in the moment right now, and we don't think what's the other side of the equation doing. You know what I mean? So, but otherwise, reason number one that I see most people have a really hard time with food noise is because they're just eating too little while they're in diet mode, right? So it makes so much sense why you're thinking about food if you aren't having very much of it. Even if I'll even take this a step further. Even if this happens, even if you're not hungry. A lot of people say, well, Jared, I only eat 1,000 calories a day or 1,200 calories a day, but I'm not hungry. Well, that's the issue. You're playing math all day. Right? Of course, you're going to think about food. If you have 1,000 calorie budget, but you have a social life, kids, you want to get ice cream with your kids after the baseball game, all these things, you're playing math all day. Right? And again, don't get me wrong. I think it's important to think about what you think about and think about food and understand calories and portions and all that. But the amount of people when I work with someone, if someone comes to me eating like 1,000 calories a day, step number one on top of their inner game is I got to get their caloric tolerance as high as possible. So like, for example, I have one of my clients, she came to me eating 1,200 calories, couldn't eat more than that. She wanted to get leaner and she was legitimately actually eating 1,200 calories. So over the course of 10 weeks, I increased her calories and we got her caloric tolerance and I recomped her, which basically means like build muscle, burn fat. So her weight stayed the same, but she got leaner and lost a bunch of belly fat, to like close to 2,000 calories. Well, right now, the amount of pressure around food and a lot of the noise around food is gone. Because she's like, Jared, I have the budget to make any of my favorite foods work. I don't have to stress about dating. I don't have to worry about being perfect because I have all these calories to spare. That's the big one. Your food noise may not even be a hunger thing, but you have to play high level strategy because your numbers are so low. Let's compare this to something else. Let's think about money noise in your brain, right? If you're listening to this and let's say money is not the most abundant right now. How much do you think about money all day? If you what you earn, like just to make numbers easy, let's say you earn $5,000 a month, but you got like $4,800 a month in bills. You got to be pretty like dialed on that. But if you know if you're paycheck to paycheck, you know that you're like, you're thinking about money a lot. Every time you swipe your card, you're like, well, I'll be able to pay the bills this month. Every time you think about buying something, you're like, should I do that or not? But let's say you had that same $4,800 a month in bills, but you make $30,000 a month. You're probably not worrying as much about money because you know you have an abundant source. Your numbers line up. You're like, I have more than enough to make all this work, right? I know that's a very vast range, but you see what I'm saying. It's the same thing here. If you are trying to live off of 1,000 calories a day, 1,200 calories a day, or this really low number in your life, and you have a hard time with food noise, it's because you're playing math all day. Every time you eat, you go, oh, should I eat that? Well, if I have this, well then, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat tonight? Because I'm then going to be hungry. You're going to think about food all day because you're eating too low. But if you maximize how many calories you can eat while still losing weight, if you see how high you can get your caloric tolerance, as in the amount of food you can eat and get away with while still being consistent on your journey and making progress, half of your food noise will go away because you have so much more calories in food to deal with. Hopefully this is making sense. Number 2, for main reason for food noise is you got to stop restricting. If it's literally like with children, you say, no, you can't have that. Like you remember when your kids were little and you go, yeah, don't touch the outlet. All of a sudden the outlet is way cooler than all their toys. It's because they go, I can't have that, but I want it now. It's in your psychology. A lot of you guys listening have this like inner rebel pattern or this inner rebel part of you is if you go, let's do this part of you goes, no. Or, well, I want this. No, I'm not allowed to have that. Okay, I want it more now. If I say, no more cupcakes, cupcakes are off limits, you now all of a sudden crave cupcakes. It's kind of like if I say, don't think about a purple elephant right now. Don't think about a purple elephant. You're going to think about a purple elephant. But if I say, don't crave cupcakes, you think about, well, what flavor are cupcakes? I put these sprinkles on it. I'd have this frosting on it, and da-da-da-da-da-da. But at the end of the day, your restriction is what's causing the other half of your food noise. Literally, it's why they call it the restrict binge cycles. You restrict your food, then you can't quit thinking about it, then you binge on it. This is why one of the easiest ways I fix, for me, I shouldn't say easiest, one of the simplest ways I fix food noise for the people that I work with with one-on-one coaching and in my collective, my coaching group, is I show them how to eat their favorite foods every single day in moderation, in where their cravings never get ballistic. Right? Think of like your cravings as like a beach ball you're trying to press underwater. We've all done that as kids. You have a beach ball, you try to shove it underwater, it's hard. And then the further you push it underwater, the higher it skyrockets and hits you in the face. Well, that's your food noise. The more you suppress this thing, you're like, no, I don't need it. No, I don't need it. No, I'm being good. No, I'm being good. Well, that beach ball is getting deeper underwater. So now it takes more to keep it down there. And then before you know it, one wrong move and that thing flies up and hits you in the face. This is why we have to approach cravings differently. There's nothing wrong with craving food. Now, and like, I even have a big thing I've been talking with clients a lot about. They're like, well, I gave in to da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, stop it. I don't like that language. Giving in. Oh, I gave in to my cravings. That makes it sound like you like peer pressured or you did something wrong. Like, oh, I gave in and made this bad decision. I think of it as honor. I honor my cravings. If I crave the cupcake, I go eat a cupcake. That keeps me from eating a dozen cupcakes. And it's a fucking 300 calorie cupcake. Let's be real here. Think about honoring the craving. Now, this doesn't, there's a dichotomy here, right? Because we have to make sure this is where we still have, ideally, most of your foods from better quality, whole, nutritious, real foods, because that's what your body's going to run best off of. And we have to keep everything in check. We don't want to just bounce from pendulum to pendulum. I usually say that, and there's some person who's an extremist listening. They go, oh, so I can just have all my calories from Pop-Tarts and gummy bears? You could. You'd feel like shit, though, and you'd be hungry all day because it's super calorie dense. But the problem is we're living in from spectrum to spectrum. You go on a diet and you ixnay all your favorite food and you only eat boiled chicken and veggies every day in mass quantities because you're on a diet. And then when you can't take that anymore, you literally only eat Pop-Tarts and gummy bears and sweets all day with zero protein, zero vegetables, zero whole foods. That's the problem. Every pendulum smacks the other side. And then most people live in this limbo of extreme to extreme to extreme to extreme. I'm sorry, but you'll never find balance that way. You'll never find the middle ground. And the middle ground is what's hardest to find. So with that being said, half of this is we have to make sure what you're doing, you're not restricting at all. But otherwise, if you keep restricting your favorite foods, you're never going to not have food noise. It's because it's just how psychology works, and our society too. I mean, if you think about it, when it comes to social events, holidays, birthdays, get-togethers, Christmas, stuff with your kids, date night, our whole society is ran and off of food and has all foods, including the ones that you have a hard time with, when it comes to any social event or any situation. So if you don't have a great relationship with these foods and you're just going, no, I'm never going to have sugar again, or I'm never going to eat out again, or, oh, carbs are bad, or, oh, I don't eat processed foods anymore. Oh, I'm on like day 64 of no chips, whatever. You're going to have a real hard time and you're always going to have food noise. This is why we need to learn to coexist with these foods in moderation, because food is so much more than fuel. But at the same time, it still is fuel. And there needs to be a dichotomy here and a balance where you're still able to reach all of your goals, be healthy, live a long time, make good choices while still enjoying all these other pieces. It's hard. If you've never been in this middle ground where you have like a level of structure and freedom at the same time, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of moving parts, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because that's how we win here. Okay. All right. Number three. When it comes to reason of food noise, this one is not talked about like at all. Number three is you need to be present more. The problem is, and this is where we kind of can merge this conversation into emotional eating, is most people, the reason you think about food all the time is because you don't think about where your feet are. You're not present with what is right now. And because food is everywhere, and if you're already having food noise from like not eating enough or restricting or trying to lose weight, it's really easy for that to be your distraction from what's right now. Most people want to be anywhere other than the now where their feet are. They're thinking about work tomorrow. They're thinking about the bad decision they made yesterday. They're regretting what happened over here. They're thinking about this. They're having stress around this, and they're anywhere but what's right now. Like when you say, well, Jared, I always think about what my next meal is. Okay, that's a problem. You have a pattern of future seeing. You have a pattern of ignoring what's in front of you and thinking about what's in the future in your next meal. Here's the truth. You've never not been able to eat like if present, other than I get there's anomalies, but for most of you listening, you're always going to have your next meal. Like it's going to be there, right? So this is a pattern thing. Most people are always like, well, I just can't quit thinking about food. I'm always thinking about what I'm going to have next while I'm eating this. Okay. Well, that's a skill set we've got to unlearn and relearn. It's like if I said, man, I want to learn guitar. I want to be really good at guitar. But I grab a guitar and I go, oh, well, I suck at guitar. Well, I can't play guitar. Right. That's right. Because I've never played guitar before. So I've got to practice and get my skill set good and work through the ugly practice sessions till I'm really good at guitar. Welcome to this stuff. If you're like, well, Jared, I've always thought about food. I can't quit thinking about food all the time. Well, yeah, it's how this goes based on your old conditioning. So what we have to do is get really good at when you notice you're drifting, like, oh, back to being present. That was a rep, just like a set practice session of guitar. Then when you notice you're starting to drift again and think about your next meal and think about yesterday and all this stuff, you go, well, no, I'm not being present. Bring it back to the present moment. That's the only way to do this. But the problem is most people just have food as their normal way to suppress the now, what they feel, and all these different things. But at the end of the day, food is is the easiest distraction for most people between food, TikTok, working, being a workaholic, all these things. But for most people, because food is everywhere and most people have, like, whether it be candy bowls at the office, food out at your house, whatever you're doing, it's just the most accessible distraction for most people who don't want to be present. I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase that. Instead of who don't want to be present, who struggle being present. Most people's autopilot mentally and emotionally is not in the present moment. It is the next thing. It is anywhere but right now. So for you, that is one of the biggest, not necessarily for you listening, but one of the third biggest reason here for me that I see food noise is because most people are not present with what's coming up for them. For most people, food is just the easiest way to distract from what's coming up for them. Right? Whether you're stressed, because here's where this really gets real. Most people do not emotionally regulate. Most people have, again, I don't know, maybe you, most people really struggle with how to handle what we would label as your negative emotions, right? Stress, worry, doubt, fear, lonely, you name it. And most people and this is from a societal level. This is not just like a diet thing. This is a societal thing where most people will not sit with what's coming up for them. We feel things that's coming up and we go, nope, don't want to feel this. This feels gross. And we distract. Whether that be the easiest thing for most people is that we distract with food. So like, for example, this is why it gets really, really deep for most people right here is if you are a more sensitive person or you experience a lot of the big emotions like stress, worry, doubt, fear, anxiety, all of these things, sad, lonely, overwhelmed. Well, if you experience a lot of these things and you happen to hide your emotions with food and you experience these emotions dozens of times per day, i.e. you will always have food noise until we handle the emotions, right? Like if you think about it, from that standpoint is if you go, man, I'm anxious all day. And when have anxiety, I think about food because I want to eat it. I want to hide my emotions with food. Well, no wonder you have lots of food noise. So the answer is not to distract with something different. Like, well, let's go to the gym or let's scroll on TikTok or let's go write a book. Like none of that. What if we just become a space of love for what comes up? This is the airy fairy shit that will change your life. Maybe you listening right now, maybe when you feel anxiety, you need to go, like your coping mechanism, your old pattern is to run to food, to hide. Well, first and foremost, you'll never lose weight ever. Like the reason I say that from like on the surface level is if you emotionally eat and you don't fix that coping mechanism, you'll never on the surface lose weight. It's like if your goal was to save money, but you emotionally spend, you're going to experience all these negative emotions the rest of your life. We will never have a life without fear, worry, doubt, anxiety, overwhelm, stress. It's just not going to happen. So if we don't have a healthy way to cope and handle these emotions separately from food, weight loss is never going to happen. But then on a more important level, your mental health is really, really important. As in, if your only way you handle your negative emotions is to hide them with food, you're going to, over time, turn yourself emotionally numb. And you're just like kicking your mental health in the dick. Because imagine what would that do to your kid? If every time your kid showed any emotion, you go, no, we don't do that here. Mommy, I'm sad. Nope, don't matter. I feel so sad. Rover died. Our favorite dog died. Doesn't matter. Go find cereal. Mommy, I'm overwhelmed with school because like my teacher hates me. She probably does. Get in on my face. I'm only here for the good emotions. Like, that sounds harsh, but that's what you're doing when you emotionally eat. When you emotionally eat, you're saying, I only do good emotions, not that bad shit. Get that out of my face. Literally. You have this inner child, like that. I've been talking about the inner child stuff a lot with clients in the collective lately, but you have to understand there's this inner part, these parts of you from an inner child perspective, because you also probably started doing this weight loss shit when you were little. You probably had associations that your mom was a Weight Watcher mom, or that you remembered your parents saying things to you, all these things. Well, that stuff's still living inside of you until we address it. Fun fact. Like, that's just a thing. That's a whole different conversation for a different time. But at the end of the day, though, when you emotionally eat, or you hide your emotions in general, but especially with food, that's what you're doing, is you are telling these parts of you that you go, you know what? I only do happy. You're not allowed to be sad in my body. You're not allowed to be overwhelmed in my body. Yeah, I know you carry the entire load of your family, but you're not allowed to feel. You're not allowed to have anxiety. What are you kidding? You have to be super mom. Hey, by the way, you have to hold it all together. Like, the thought of you like actually crying and showing your emotions. Yeah, we don't do that here. That is what you're doing when you emotionally eat. So no wonder it wreaks havoc on your mental health, your emotional health, and guess what? Your physical health. Makes fat loss fucking impossible too. So this is one of the most tactical things you can spend your time doing, is fixing all of this. But the beautiful thing is, because I don't gatekeep, I'm actually going to show you how to do it. Okay. So but otherwise, back to the original point of this, the third reason for food noise that I see, the main one, is most people have an inability or a pattern to not be present in the moment or with what is here right now. Because again, if every time you feel not so great things, you have to numb it with food, you're going to have food noise. Because here's what happens. Then you numb it with food. And then all of a sudden, guess what? Food has those calories that you're trying to avoid. And you're like, oh, fuck, I blew my calories out of the water. Then you're playing math all day, trying like, well, then how do I compensate this here or there? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to start over Monday. Like, you see how this just like one thing feeds the other, feeds the other, feeds the other? Let alone you struggle with all three of these, right? If you're a combo platter, which is okay. Like I said, I'm showing you how to fix these, right? So it's no wonder you have food noise. I don't blame you for having food noise, but let's fix it. Okay. Like, that's like, let's go through these steps to fix it. Cause like, so far the first two are a little bit more simple. If you're not eating enough from number one, got to get them calories up. We got to eat more. Get your calories up. Boom. That part goes away. Number two is stop restricting. You quit restricting. All of a sudden now a lot of the pressure on food goes away because there's nothing off limits. Have whatever you want in moderation. Okay. But then the hardest one, number three, man, that's the hardest one. And it's not that like we're doing anything hard. It's what it is going against your old conditioning. Because here's the thing. I totally like hold space and see and understand that for whatever reason, you learned this whole like suppressing your emotions with food thing probably from childhood, right? Most people grew up in a household where it was either taught we don't feel these things, or let's say if you expressed emotions, you got hurt emotionally, mentally, physically, who knows? Or let's just say like nothing bad even happened, but let's just say the general consensus is we shove shit down in my house. Right? I can resonate with that a lot. Like if that's how it was, like I know people who their family never did anything to them, but like if the father figure or the mother figure never let you feel certain emotions or what have you, it's one of those things where like, of course you might get the sense of, oh, I shouldn't feel these. Something that recently came out for me, this is getting really, really personal. But I think it's going to help connect. Something that came out recently for me in therapy is, for me, you guys know, I'm like all about the emotional stuff. I found out, and this was subconscious, I have a hard time letting myself feel anger. So I was in therapy and we dug that one deeper, and I realized, my dad growing up was a very angry man. Again, like he never did anything, never hit us, never like did anything like that. But my dad was always had a short fuse, always raised his voice, always got angry, always got mad. And it was just kind of like, it was a lot to deal with. Well, for me, even though, yeah, he never did anything, but when I was little, I made the association anger means that. And I didn't like that. It was always yelling, always anger, always like short fused. And so for me, I made that association when I was a kid. I'm like, yeah, anger's bad. High levels of frustration's bad. So I found out, like, and this came out in therapy, I wasn't even aware of it. It was that like my therapist always does like this little emotional check-in with me. Like, cool, how was anxiety the past week? How was sadness? How would you rate contentment, joy, all this stuff? Anger was always at a 0. And she's like, let's dig into that. And it came out is that like, it turns out I had been unknowingly suppressing my anger, like any anger, because I'm like, oop, anger's bad. I remember that. That's like what you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to sit here and shit talk my dad. That's not what my intention here is. I think it's important to give you context though. Like, nothing happened, but I made that association when I was a kid that anger is bad. So now I'm actually having to reparent myself and give myself actually permission. Like, hey, it's okay to get frustrated. You're allowed to get angry. Obviously we don't do things with obviously I'm not condoning like yell, hit, scream. Like, I'm not doing anything with my anger, but at the end of the day, I still need to allow myself to hold space and feel that. So it's the same thing here for you, is what is coming up that you're not allowed to feel, and actually give yourself the space of like, I'm allowed to feel this. I'm allowed, it's like, I've been telling clients a lot lately who are struggling with their emotions. I'm like, you have a lot on your shoulders. You're allowed to be overwhelmed. You know that. And they're like, I never thought about it like that. Right. Or like if a breakup happens, like, you can be sad. Like, you looked forward to that relationship and they treated you poorly and blew you off. You know what? You should actually allow yourself to feel these emotions. You know what happens when you feel them? You heal and they leave you. It's like going to the bathroom. If you have an upset stomach, you go to the bathroom and it leaves you, literally. But with the emotions, it's the same thing. But the thing is, feeling is healing, but feeling hurts. Feeling sucks. Feelings means you are with the anxiety. You are welcoming in the stress, which is hard for a lot of people. But again, if your coping mechanism is food, you're going to have food noise. So the fix, hold space for what you feel and allow yourself to feel it. Think of it this way. What are you trying to get out of food? Like, what is it you need that food is giving you? For most people, it's a distraction, right? And people are like, oh, food gives me comfort. Well, for like 5 minutes, and then it's back to where you started, right? So that's why for most people, it's a distraction. So the solution to a lot of food noise is actually being present. And not just because when you're in the present moment, that's when stuff comes up. But if something is coming up, we need to honor it and be allowed to be there with it. Okay. So now, like I said earlier, if those 3 aren't resonating for you, go back and listen to the other podcast I did on food noise a little bit more in depth. But that's where like the food noise kind of leads to emotional eating. Okay. And the concept of like always thinking about food. Now let's talk about get a little bit tactical, because then I know we're already at 40 minutes in. So how do we do this? How do we hold space for our emotions? Because like I said, I don't gatekeep. I want you guys to have the tactics and strategies. So we talked about the first 2, how to fix those. So let's talk about what do you do? Because this is the big one. Like, if I'm always thinking about food because I'm running from what I feel and I'm always distracting myself with dieting and all this stuff, how do I hold space? I'm going to make this really tactical and show you what I show my clients and collective members. Number 1 is journal. You need to start the easiest way to do this is journal what you feel. The only prompt you need is, what do I feel right now? And write like you're writing a letter to a friend. Man, I feel so upset right now. I had the worst day at work. My boss yelled at me and it made me feel inferior. And now I'm stressed. I wonder if I will even have my job. And that makes me wonder, like, how am I going to pay my bills? I have this big tax thing coming up, and get it out. Write what you feel. You're not saving it for later. You're not giving it to anyone. You are literally just holding space and writing. That's it. So this way, instead of turning to food or distracting, journal. When you're like, oh, I can't quit thinking about food, journal. Get it out. Whatever's coming up. Okay. Second thing you can do is meditate. This is a little bit bigger of an ask, but you're basically, like if I said sit with your anxiety, actually sit, close your eyes, breathe, and let yourself feel it. Actually, if I go, cool, feel your anxiety. Like even if a mentor of mine, Kyle Cease, like you guys, I've done content with him, I've done an episode with him. A thing that I learned from him is he says, give permission, go, you're allowed to feel anxiety in my body. You're allowed to feel sad in my body. You're allowed to feel worthless in my body. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed in my body. And you're actually giving it permission to be here. But don't just say it. It's not just a bullshit like affirmation. It's actually like receive it and let yourself feel that. Okay. Third thing you can do is what I have my busy clients. I have do this like mini breathwork sessions, because you may go, Jared, I like work a lot of hours. I'm always in a cubicle. I'm always around people. I can't just journal and meditate. Here's the thing you can do. You can stop and pause. I've been saying lately, there's power in pausing. You can pause and just do a couple really big deep breaths in your head, like acknowledge the anxiety. You know what? I'm allowed to be anxious. Anxiety, you're welcome here. Stress, you're allowed here. It's wild. I have some of my busiest, highest performing clients who are also the most high strung, by the way, do this. They'll be busy, 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 and they notice it's building and they go, big, deep breath, reminds you where you're here, reminds you be where your feet are. And then what do you feel? Anxiety. Where do you feel it at? In my chest. Cool. What's it trying to tell you? That I'm right here. Cool. I see you, anxiety. You're welcome here. You're allowed to stay. And then all of a sudden the anxiety doesn't want to stay. It's wild how that works, but that's what I want you to do. And then the last thing, this is the one, I'm working with someone who has a really hard time with this, a really hard time holding space. I always say, take your, whatever you're feeling on a walk, go on a quiet walk, no podcast, no music, but you're feeling anxious, go take your anxiety on a walk. Just go on a walk with it. You can even talk out loud like, man, I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. I feel sad. Allowed to be sad. Like literally, like almost like a talking journal, but you're taking your anxiety on a walk. All these are just examples of holding space and actually allowing you to have a human experience. Guys, listen, you are a crazy, busy individual. You are a human with an intellect that drives and runs off of their emotions, that lives in this chaotic world with responsibilities. But then I would argue you're a spiritual being while living in this physical body. Like you got a lot of shit going on. So with all these responsibilities of your friends, family, work, school, like whatever you got going on, give yourself permission to feel. It's okay. Right? This is where there can be a little bit of reparenting. You may have to like reparent yourself. Like, you know what? I'm allowed to feel now. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to, but I'm allowed to now. These things are okay. I'm safe now. I'm in a safe position where I can feel stress. I'm allowed to feel and express sadness, disappointment, whatever it is. So that's how you start. So there you have it, my friends. Went a little bit longer than I thought, about 45 minutes in. But that is how to fix food noise, always thinking about food and getting into emotional eating as well. I hope this was helpful. I hope it changed your life. The most important piece, you have to act on this shit. You can't just sit here and listen. You actually have to put these things into practice. Now, if you're listening to this and you go, man, I think I need help putting this into practice because that's a lot. There are two places that you can get this kind of help. You could either apply to join one-on-one coaching, where I would actually be coaching you, me personally, showing you how to do all this, holding you accountable and walking you through this hand in hand so you're not alone on this journey. Or if you're not quite ready for that level of support and of a dynamic, I also have my coaching group, The Collective. Depending on when you're watching this, enrollment may be open, it may be not, but either way, there will be a link in this comments or in the description where you can either join or be added to the wait list. So either way, I want to make sure you get what you need. So those are the best places if you are like, I think I want help with this. Okay. But let's say you're not there yet. Totally fine. I don't play the high pressure game. If you're newer to my content, number one, be sure you're subscribed to the show. And so you can keep getting this content that come at you. But otherwise I have a couple places you can go. Number one is go download a copy of my fat loss checklist is what it's called. It's a 5-day mini course on all this stuff. And it gets kind of a little more surface level. This is really deep. So this is a little bit more surface level around how to approach food without having all the food noise and with a more sustainable approach to fat loss and nutrition and enjoying your life. Okay. The second spot you should go is go join my free Facebook group. The Facebook group is not The Collective. I have some people that ask that a lot, but I have a free Facebook group because I think it's important to be around a bunch of like-minded people with that are actually going somewhere. There's like, if you're in one Facebook group, you're probably in 12, and most of the time they are strugglers leading strugglers, which is why most people struggle. So in my Facebook group, I lead it, I police it. As in if there are people kind of going against what our core values are and what we believe, I literally kick them out. Excuse me. And with that being said, I put more content like this in there. So this way, if that's kind of your cup of tea and you like to be around more like-minded people, go join the Facebook group. It's called Fat Loss Simplified. I'll leave a link below. Otherwise, that is about it right now. A couple things coming up that you need to be aware of. Number one, I'm about to do a merch drop. So if you're watching the YouTube video and you see my Dieting from the Inside Out shirt, I will be doing a merch drop. So people have been asking me for years to do it, and I'm just haven't. And then what else was I going to say? Oh, also, I've been in the middle of writing the book. I have been, if you've been watching my Instagram stories, which you should be, I've been working literally almost daily on my Dieting from the Inside Out book. So that will be coming out hopefully very soon. Much longer process than I thought, but I will leave a link soon for anyone who wants to get on the wait list to be notified as soon as that book goes live. Otherwise, that is it, my friends. If you need anything, please let me know. I appreciate you. I love you. If you need anything at all, literally, like, I'm so easy to get a hold of. If you have questions, need anything, and then be sure and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, I'll talk to you soon.